Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this series we go through all of the solar charms in the Exalted 3rd edition core book, we review them and we revise those we feel are necessary to revise. Today we're going to go through the bureaucracy charms, and we have already gone through the charm trees leading up to that point. As always, these are my own personal opinions, and any changes I make to these charms are optional. There was a long time ago I last read the bureaucracy charms, so it will be interesting to take a look at them again, and I do believe that most of them will actually be fine, because as I recall they are for the most part quite narrative charms and not too heavily mechanical, so there shouldn't be too many issues with them, but I suppose we'll see that once we get into them. The first charm is Frugal Merchant Method. Frugal Merchant Method. One mode simple instant. With a cursor examination, the lawgiver can determine the exact quality of any good offered for sale. She can tell if it's in poor, average or excellent condition. However, this grants her no knowledge of the market value of any particular good, nor does it tell her the purpose of an object. By inspecting a scavenge mechanism of the first stage, you can tell if it was functional but not how it functions. So this is a solid charm. Compared to most of the charms we have looked at before, this is a highly narrative charm, which is good because it elevates the storytelling. Don't see any issue with that charm. So let's move on. Insightful buyer technique. 3 modes simple. Through use of this charm, the solar gains an intuitive feel for marketplace at a given instant, allowing her to intuit roughly how much a given object will fetch in any one market. Though the Exalt need not be physically present in the market, this charm must be used with a particular sales venue in mind. The solar cannot discover previously unknown markets through use of this charm. She can, however, review distant markets to determine which would be the best to sell a good. The more specific the venue contemplated, the more accurate the forecast. A solar using this technique can make a perfectly accurate assessment at the moment of sale, but the longer she waits between using this charm and the actual sale of the goods, the larger her margin of error, as economies shift with time. Similar with Frugal Merchant, this is a narrative charm that I think is a good way to elevate the storytelling for a merchant-focused or trade-focused character. This detail is interesting, for example, because this indicates that the solar could study a market through conversations with other traders, for example, and then make the dice roll. So you don't have to be in an actual physical marketplace. Yeah, overall I think it's very solid, so A-OK. I have a feeling that there will be a lot of A-OK charms this video. I'm doing this right after I've woken up, so my mind hasn't really caught up with me yet, so I feel that my language isn't really with me. My internal translations here. English is my second language, but when I'm tired it's more like my third or fourth, so. Anyway, consumer evaluating glance. Three modes. The lawgiver can evaluate a buyer's intention and budget with a glance. This enacts a perception of which bureaucracy read intentions action against the target's guile. If successful, the Exalt can tell if the target plans to betray or cheat her. If it does, the solar's resolve is raised by your essence against all bargain action attempts by that character. She may also use this charm to determine the character's resources rating and whether he intends to buy or whether he needs to be swayed into attempting a bargain action. Another absolutely solid charm. I think this is a clever way of incorporating bureaucracy into the social influence mechanics as well. And it's a nice detail that you can assess a buyer's resources as well to see if they are valuable buyers or not. So very solid charm. I'm sensing a pattern here. This could become a short video. All-Seeing Master Procurer. 5 modes, 1 scene. Through use of this charm, the Solar broadcasts her ability to evaluate and fence any good and to estimate the viability of any good or service in any market. This charm makes characters naturally assume the Solar is a master merchant, someone who should be approached in order to receive the best deal or gain information about any certain product. This charm does not confer knowledge of any good the Solar is unfamiliar with, but it does allow her to reflexively employ insightful buyer technique for 1 mode. In order to speculate on the value of goods in local or foreign markets, even those that may not be physically present. I mean, this detail is superfluous, right? Because I think this already allows you to not be physically present. Yes. But, another narrative charm. It's a nice effect, you know, that you basically put up a sign telling people that you have goods to sell. Yeah, not only to make immediate trades either, but to actually gain information related to products and markets and such. So I think one change I would do to this is that no, maybe not actually. I thought about maybe changing it from 1 scene to indefinite, just so that you can have it active. But I think it makes sense to have it as a 1 scene activation, because it still assumes that the Solar is actively trying to express their role as a merchant. So if the charm is changed to indefinite, then they could basically just activate it and have it as a passive effect, which means that expressing the idea that they are an active trader doesn't have to make sense in every situation, for example. Like if you enter combat or nowhere near a market. So it makes sense that you actually have to activate it and last for the scene. I could probably buff it a little actually. It does give a discount to insightful buyer technique, which is not actually necessary to acquire the charm itself. What is necessary is consumer evaluating glance, which it doesn't actually discount. So that's a bit weird. It would make more sense if this was actually a charm that you actually had to have in order to get All-Seeing Master Procurer. I do think we can do it like this. Promote discount to insightful buyer technique also applies to consumer evaluating glance. So now you can use consumer evaluating glance for only 1 mode as well. I think that makes sense. Yes, I like that. I like that change. I'm going to take a very short break to get some coffee. So I'll be right back. Before we actually head back into the bureaucracy charms, I do want to take one moment to just look at yes, here we go. I want to take a quick look at this because these bolded, cursive and underlined subjects are videos I have already posted on the channel. And I do have some other videos that I want to get made, but I also appreciate suggestions for what kind of videos you want to see. So the plan was to get a vampire video up, because there was a long time ago I both did a lore video and a vampire video. So I've been working a little bit on this, but I've been working on it quite slowly. I don't think this will be the first video to get out. I think I may squeeze something else in that I feel I could get done quicker. But the idea is to make a vampire video at least. And I also want to make some more player tips videos, and I had an idea just to make a general how to be a better role player video. This idea has a little bit of clickbait in it, but I know that there are a lot of channels that do these kinds of videos, so I'm not sure if I should try to figure out something more original. Or maybe I should just make the video and present my own thoughts about what makes or what constitutes good roleplay. And then we have a GM tips video that I want to make. This was a suggestion I got earlier, how to introduce a new tabletop RPG to a group. This is quite relevant for Exalted as well, because Exalted 3rd edition, because it's intimidating. The rules are a hit or miss for many people, and the amount of charms can contribute to choice paralysis, and I've seen that happen. Especially when the core book was quite new and a lot of new people tried to get into the game, and not as many as we hoped actually stuck with it, unfortunately. So this video would be dedicated to a storyteller or a game master, and a few tips they could take in mind when trying to introduce a new role-playing game to a group that is unfamiliar with it. And I will probably tailor this video towards Exalted, actually, just because it's relevant. And I have introduced Exalted to a number of new players with more or less success. And then we have using tabletop RPGs as therapy. This is an interesting subject, and it's the subject of my dissertation that I'm writing this semester. If you don't know, I studied to become a social worker, and I also work part-time as a mental health counselor. So the use of tabletop role-playing games in psychotherapy is very interesting to me. And my own research for my dissertation is focusing on tailoring role-playing games towards autism in particular, or the entire ASD spectrum. And I haven't really gotten into the actual work yet. It's still in the preparatory phase. But the intention is to interview people, and there are some organizations that actually actively work with tabletop as a method, so it will be interesting to interview them about their work. And this is also, especially when focused on autism or children and youth with autism, the use of tabletop RPGs is closely associated with different kinds of play therapies. So I do intend to make some kind of video, or perhaps a video series about this particular topic when I'm done with the dissertation, so that will be in a couple of months. Maybe close to summer, hopefully. I could get some video like this out and talk a little more in depth and with some more information, some more facts about it, whether it's a good thing or a less good thing. But it is an interesting topic that I'm going to explore. And then I want to make another role-playing journal. We're still not even done with chapter 2 of the second story arc. But I do recommend that if you're new to the channel that you check this out. I did change the format a bit around part 3 because I had a bit too fun with editing here, so I started playing around with background music and sound effects and such in part 3. If the channel grows, then I do hope, this is a bit of a distant dream still, but I do hope that I could get some helpful souls to perhaps voice some of the characters in the role-playing journal, and then it could be a little bit more kind of like a radio drama than my own personal account of a session. So that could be interesting to see how that unfolds. I have started to get into the Trinity books. I did a deep dive into this a couple of weeks ago, and I do have the Aeon book here as well. I actually used my credits for the my Storyteller's Vault credits for the Exalted Adventure I wrote and uploaded, and that is linked in the description below. I did use my credits for that to purchase all of the Trinity books, because I only had them as PDFs and I really want my books. I really want to fill out my shelf, so I'm happy with those purchases. But I'm trying to get more into this, but it's been a matter of time. I haven't delved into Aeon yet, only the core book. But I thought that if I was going to make some more Trinity videos, making a general lore video about Flux could be an interesting start. So that's a suggestion. And then I'm not really sure. I do want to spread out the topics a little bit more. We have the system videos as well, of course. I know that a lot of you are waiting for the Gambits video here. Because 4 months ago when I made the combat movement video, I told you that you wouldn't have to wait too many months for another Exalted System video. And now there's 4 months later and I still haven't made the Gambits video that I promised. And I do want to make it. I do study full time. I work part time. I do work on my own game on my spare time. I do freelance for Onyx Path on my spare time. So there's surprisingly little time over to crank these out. And I do want, I mean with your support of course I can do it more often, but it takes time to make a video. And most of the time I would say is in the editing. The heavily scripted videos, the deep dive videos, are the worst when it comes to actually writing the script, of course, because you have to read the entire book cover to cover and, you know, dig into it. But these kinds of videos don't take too long to actually make. They take a while to edit, and I think I can crank them out a bit quicker, but I'm not sure exactly when. I mean, the next charm video I'm going to get into is about craft charms. And I had hoped originally to get the crafting video out before I got into the craft charms, but now that won't be the case. The craft charms will come out long before the actual crafting video. But that's the way of things. And I do think there is a lot of interest in a crafting video as well, because that's one of the topics of concern when it comes to Exalted 3rd edition. And I do have my thoughts about it. But anyway, these are my ideas as of now, and I do appreciate suggestions. And if I get any good suggestions, I add them to the document. So keep the suggestions coming. Even if you want to see more games, you can suggest that as well. I mean, last summer I was talking about Blue Rose all the time. I wanted to get the Blue Rose deep dive out, and I did start working on it, but I could never really get into Blue Rose, so I decided to focus on Trinity instead, and I am glad that I did. I may get back to it at some point, but my general impression was that Blue Rose was quite overestimated, I would say. But my coffee is done, so I'm going to go get that, and then we're jumping straight back into the bureaucracy charms. Here we go. Next charm. Illimitable Master Fans. One mote, simple. By spending a day in a market, the lawgiver can sense the ebb and flow of commerce, guiding her to knowledge of hidden or illegal markets. By observing normal transactions, speaking with merchants and customers, and watching the general course of economic dalliance, she becomes aware of the bureaucratic specialties of everyone connected to a specific market. The lawgiver even becomes aware of the special market knowledge of characters whose names she doesn't know and whose faces she has never seen. Okay. She needs to observe normal transactions. That's an interesting and important detail. So she needs to spend the day in the market actually talking to people, watching people trade, watching the goods and the flow of the goods. These are... I mean, it's clear narratively what the charm does. But it's not really clear what it is that makes it good, I would say, because you still need to spend a day in the market. I would say the only good thing about it is that you bypass a dice roll that you would most likely succeed anyway, because you have Bureaucracy 5 when you get this charm. Because I don't think this charm actually gives anything new that the player wouldn't be able to get just by, role-playing and making some dice rolls. So I think that the one thing we could do to make this charm more worthwhile is to focus on the time required. Here, for example, by spending an hour, then you can keep being on your way and don't have to delay an entire session by spending a day in the market. Yes, an hour could be a bit too long as well. 10 minutes, a scene in the market. I think an hour is fine. Just this distinction, I think, makes the charm more interesting and more effective, because you can get in, actually tell the storyteller that you intend to spend 1 hour to study the market and activate the charm and get the result and get on with your day. So I think that's a good change. Deft Official's Way. 5 modes, reflexive, 1 scene. The lawgiver becomes preternaturally adept at navigating through bureaucracies. She can naturally sense who to talk to in order to produce results, who expects or is amenable to bribes, which functionaries are actually useful or friendly, and which are officious tyrants abusing their meager silver or power. The Solar may add her bureaucracy score to the read intentions actions of an ability so long as it helps her in producing a desired bureaucratic result, such as obtaining a license, gaining a passport, or securing an audience. Yes, the effect itself is very good. You know, you can add bureaucracy to a presence roll, for example. The only thing that, the only hiccup, I would say, is because the charm is scene long. I would say that a scene long charm expects a duration of events, I think, that are associated with the charm itself. I mean, in a combat situation, if you have a scene-long defensive charm, for example, then you can defend against any attack coming your way that scene. When it comes to bureaucracy and such, a scene-long charm is less relevant unless you get multiple uses out of it, I think. I think that this effect here, and this as well, the read intentions in itself, could be an instant charm, I think. But then it has to be cheaper. I think it makes more sense to activate Deft Official's Way when you're doing the actual read intentions and not at the beginning of the scene, in case you want to make read intentions rolls during the scene. That's my opinion. Actually, this particular effect could, in theory, make sense for a scene-long effect, but it could also be buffed into a permanent effect, I think. But that may be just changing the charm for the purpose of changing it, and I don't really want to get into that. Because as it's written, this effect could technically be a scene-long effect, or a permanent effect, but a scene-long effect makes sense. Not for 5 modes, but you know, a 1 mode scene-long effect. This particular effect makes less sense to make scene-long, in my opinion. I think we can keep the charm as it is, but I do think we can lower the mode cost. Because I don't think this effect is worth 5 modes. And I don't think this effect is worth 5 modes. I think this effect, if used multiple times in a scene, could be worth 5 modes, but if not, then putting 5 modes in just to keep this effect going feels kind of like a waste. I think this effect could be worth 3 modes maybe. And this first effect could be worth 1 modes, so I decided to put it at 3 modes for now. And keep the rest of the effects. And I think that's a compromise. That's a compromise. Measuring glance. 5 mode simple instant. The Solar can sum up the member of an organization with perfect incision. This charm creates a social or mental attribute plus bureaucracy read intentions action, adding the Solar's essence and automatic successes. This charm is automatically successful unless resisted with magic and cannot be resisted by characters whose temper willpower is currently lower than the Solar's. Upon reading, your subject Excel can determine the exact strongest or most relevant intimacy holds for the organization in question. Social or mental attribute plus bureaucracy read intentions with essence automatic successes, which is 1. Automatically succeed unless resisted with magic, but you cannot resist it with magic unless you have more willpower than the Solar. So I think this effect can be a bit could be too powerful actually. 5 modes. Yeah, I think we should nerf this a little bit. Remove this secondary effect here. The charm can be defended against using magic, regardless of the target's willpower. I think that's a nerf I'm happy with. I think the cost makes sense anyway, because it automatically succeeds, and you get the strongest, most relevant intimacy. Yeah, 5 modes feels like it makes sense for that effect. Non-combat charms in general tends to have a bit of at least a little higher mode cost, because you don't spend your modes as quickly in a non-combat scene. I think I'm happy with this change, so let's move on. Enigmatic Bureau Understanding. Permanent. The Exalt can govern an organization with preternatural awareness. With this charm, the lawgiver is made aware when a member of an organization has his intimacy for the organization challenged by any kind of social influence that does not involve the psychic keyword. This awareness is contingent on the Solar having used Read Intentions actions to uncover the relevant intimacies of the character in question. The Solar's awareness extends to the moment the character's intimacy is challenged, if and only if the character is currently functioning in some capacity for the organization. If the subject is not presently working for the Solar, she only notices that someone has attempted to influence him when he returns to his role or functions as a member of the organization. This clarification applies to the current as well as former members. The Exalt only immediately notices influence against the character who is currently on duty. This charm does not convey any knowledge of the substance of such social influence or whether it was successful, only that it happened. I think that's an important detail, the highlighted part here, because that expects that you need to have some suspicions already to incentivize you into making this action. I think that's a good thing. I'm not sure if I understand this really. When? Okay, so upon a successful Read Intentions roll, the Solar retroactively figures out when the intimacy was challenged. So you will know if it happened yesterday, if it happened a year ago. So if the person is a spy, for example, then you could get an idea of how long ago they were hired as a spy, for example. That's my reading of this effect, at least. And if the subject is not presently working for the Solar, so I assume if the Solar is studying workers for a different organization. Okay, I think that's A-okay. Speed the wheels. 8 modes. Simple, 1 task. Through the use of this charm, the Solar can cause a bureaucracy to finish a task in record time. Using this charm causes the organization to work faster by a number of degrees equal to the Solar's essence. A task that would be accomplished in a century takes only a season. A task that would be accomplished in a season takes only a month. What would take a month takes only a week. What takes a week only takes a day. And what could be accomplished in days just takes minutes. I think that should be hours, but okay. Any request that would take less than a day is processed immediately. The solar is literally moved to the front of the queue and is transferred into the services of an organization the moment she makes a request. Therefore, at Essence 3, a solar could obtain records from a Fairfolk freehold that would normally take a century in just a week. At Essence 5, she could obtain it in minutes. I mean, it's a solid charm. This is a charm that's been used in many of my games by players. I think it's always the same player actually uses this charm, but for different characters. I'm sensing a pattern here. But the thing I like the most about this charm is that it progresses the narrative. I mean, as a storyteller, you want the narrative to constantly be progressed, but you still want to present challenges to the players. And if you present bureaucratic challenges, one of those challenges is to actually delay the players and, have them face a complicated bureaucracy where they have to try to either manipulate their way through or sit in line for hours and hours and feel miserable doing so. So Speedy Wheels is a charm appreciated by both the player and the storyteller, because both want the story to progress. 8 modes though. Because the charm is used outside of combat, 8 modes becomes less of a big deal. Because there's a good chance that you didn't spend many more modes in the scene you used Speedy Wheels than those 8 modes. Maybe a Broker's Excellence or something to, try to manipulate someone or get some information about an organization or things like that. But 8 modes could still be a bit much, I think, because the goal with this charm is to succeed on it or to actually use it. And I would say that both the storyteller and the player want this charm to be used for the most part, just to get the story going. So if the mode cost is a bit too high, then that would limit that could be a deciding factor. I don't think it would be most of the time, but it could be a deciding factor in whether or not the charm is used. And I think that if lowering to 6 modes, I don't think that would change anything, because it's still a narrative charm. I think it could cost 1 mode and it would still not change anything. But 6 modes is probably still a good... It still makes it feel... It makes the cost feel relevant still. It's not really a needed change, actually, but I think it's a change that I prefer, at least. Yeah, let's go with that. Bureau rectifying method. 10 modes, 1 willpower. Actually, now when I think about it, should I be a bit of a hypocrite now and actually try to enforce a willpower on the Speedy Wheels? I think there are pros and cons with it. I do contradict what I just said, though, if I make this change. Because, like I said, the idea is to actually use the charm, but a willpower cost makes sense because the charm also is kind of a representation of the player's will. The player really wants to get their task done quicker. And it feels like it's the kind of action that a solar would put some will into, hence the willpower cost. Do I think it's necessary to do from a balance perspective? No, I don't think so. Mainly because it's not a combat charm. So adding a willpower cost makes narrative sense, but it also contradicts what I said before, so it's a bit of a tricky one. I'm curious to know if you have any opinions about it. I will probably keep it like this, 6 modes and no willpower. But there's one part of me here that says that I'm gonna put a willpower on Speedy Wheels because it feels right for some reason. But screw it, let's move on to Bureau Rectifying Method. 1 investigation. The Solar may use her bureaucratic prowess to reform an ailing or corrupt bureaucracy. The lawgiver must participate in an investigation of the organization, attending or leading inquiries, reviewing records, interviewing involved parties. For the duration of the inquest, add the Solar's bureaucracy and automatic successes to her investigation and socialized roles to conduct this investigation. In addition, while this charm is in effect, members of the organization will automatically perceive the Solar as a subject of confidential trust with regards to the Bureau, someone they should both confide in and should speak truthfully to. This registers as a major intimacy with most, but those with strong will and reasons to want to hide the truth will clock in with no more than a minor intimacy of respect for the lawgiver's authority. I think this is a very cool narrative charm. It costs 10 motes and 1 willpower. The 10 motes is committed throughout the entire investigation. The investigation itself could in theory be an entire story arc, so that's a long time to commit that many motes. But the bonuses, I think, make up for it. You get 5 automatic successes. These are charm successes, so you can technically not do any excellences for those rolls during that time, because you'll automatically have 5 successes. The intimacy is also worth quite a lot, I would say. The question is, if I'm the storyteller and I present a story hook for a story hook that involves the bureaucracy player who wants to make an investigation, I expect the story hook to at least take a couple of in-game days, during which they will question different people and case scenes and things like that. How would that player feel if I suddenly take 10 of their motes and hold them until the end of the story arc? Because that will restrict what they can do. I think the willpower cost should be kept. Question is, 8 motes, is it still too much? 7 motes? 6 motes? It shouldn't go below 5 motes at least. 8 motes. 8 or 7 feels kind of right for this, I think, because of the 5 successes. 7. The problem with 7 is that it's an uneven number, and we just can't have that. Even numbers are so much more pretty to look at. Let's go with this. It feels a little bit better at least. I think the effect itself is really good. This is, these are the kinds of charms that I like. Enlightened Discourse Method. 4 modes, 1 scene. Deft Official's Way and Frugal Merchant Method. The Exalt's understanding of business language and commerce makes her seem well and wise. Add half her bureaucracy score rounded up in dice to all social influence to affect bargains, trade, create business partnerships, create goodwill between organizations, communicate effective orders, mediate, and so on. This actually, this has always been one of my favorite charms in bureaucracy, but this is the kind of charm I want to make indefinite. I think that the actions the player will take could very well scatter out over a day of work, so to say. Not to, if they are forced to reactivate the charm every scene, it would just be dull after a while. So I think making this indefinite and allowing the player to just keep it active is a good way in making the charm more interesting. So yeah, let's go with this. Irresistible Salesman Spirit. 6 modes, 1 willpower, supplemental. This charm depicts a Solar who is an irresistible, high-pressure salesman. The charm supplements a bargain action with double 7s. If the Exalt's bargain is successful, she gains a point of temporary willpower. This is insanely powerful. 6 modes, 1 willpower. Yeah. Extremely powerful. And you have a pretty good chance to get your willpower back. Yeah, let's keep it. A-OK. A-OK. Ungoverned market awareness. Permanent. The Solar is so attuned to the flow of trade that she can sense anytime a character within range of her senses uses the broker's or Larson ability to make a transaction. This does not overwhelm her in market settings. She may simply ignore the proceedings, but she may also choose to sweep for particular transactions. This may aid her in locating characters with market specialties indicated by the prerequisite. And the prerequisite was by observing normal transaction speaking with merchant customers and watching blah 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 blah, she becomes aware of the bureaucratic specialties of everyone connected to a specific market. I see. I think this is a good upgrade to that other charm, so A-OK. And I'm out of coffee, so I'll be right back. Just look at this. I had a feeling that most of the bureaucracy charms would be fine. And it seems my theory was correct. You know, more narratively driven charms tend to be better because they don't have an important mechanical impact. So rarely any issues with balance when it comes to these charms. Where were I? Ungoverned market. Bureau reforming kata. 5 modes, 1 willpower, reflexive instant. The lawgiver may use this charm to sort an organization she controls, moving personnel and dropping its weakest members. This charm may be used after Bureau rectifying method to instantly cleanse an organization of any hostile magic such as indolent official charm or astrological curses. Whether the Solar is able to determine the presence of such magic depends on the thoroughness of her investigation. If the If the storyteller is satisfied that she has uncovered evidence of malignant forces at work, this charm automatically succeeds at clearing all such effects and making the organization immune to them for 1 season. Oh shit, that's powerful. That's powerful. And it doesn't seem to require any roll of any kind, so all you have to do is succeed on investigation. Technically the Solar doesn't even need to know that there is magic at work, I think. She could just decide sometimes to, let's use Bureau Reforming Kata just in case. I wonder if this charm could actually negate the need for an investigation to begin with. If you don't actually need to uncover the magic, you could just cancel it. But I guess the investigation could still have some mundane elements in it that are dangerous enough to be worth investigating. I do think that this is probably a charm that could be worth a higher cost though. So let's nerf it a bit. 10 modes, 1 willpower. I feel like it makes more sense to have this charm cost 10 modes, 1 willpower than Bureau Rectifying Method. Because this is supposed to be the purge. The thing that you use once. But that's a bit flashy. So I'm just thinking, as it's written, it seems like this charm may be used. I think I misinterpreted this before when I said that it didn't have it to be. I think maybe used in this case could be maybe. This is a bit of a tricky one, because maybe it could either mean has to be or could be. And that's not really clear to me, at least. But maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe it's the fact that English isn't my first language. But to me, it's not clear whether or not it has to be used after Bureau Rectifying Method. I don't think it I don't think it should have to be. Let's do it like this. The charm can be used for 10 modes, 1 willpower to cleanse hostile magic. If it's used after this is a simple effect. If it's used after Bureau Rectifying, it's reflexive and it costs maybe. 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 Maybe, maybe, maybe. I think the Solar should be aware of the magic. I think that's an important detail. And I think that if it's used after an investigation, then it should be more worthwhile. I still think it should cost a willpower, but Let's go with this. Indolent Official Charm. 5 modes, simple, stackable. The lawgiver may use her power to slow as well as hasten the bureaucracy. Through use of this charm, the Solar may bring the wheels of government to a grinding halt with regards to a single task. Documents will be lost at every turn, every petty official who could possibly interfere or request a bribe will do so, and petitions and important requests will inevitably end up neglected at the bottom of the pile. For every point of essence the Exalt possesses, the investigation is delayed by 1 degree from days to weeks, weeks to months, months to seasons, seasons to years. Thus an essence to a Solar could delay an investigation that would take a week, causing it to take an entire season. The Solar need not be party to a matter to delay it. She can speculate on an investigation she is unaware of, committing motes against the possibility of such an investigation in the future. For example, she could stymie the ongoing secret police investigation into my business without being certain such an investigation were occurring. However, even though this charm will defend her against such intrigues, this charm will not inform her as to whether such an investigation exists or is ongoing. The Solar may stack this charm essence times, protecting herself against an equal number of different investigations. It's super powerful, and I do love it. But this is the kind of charm where 5 modes could potentially be a bit cheap. It's technically the opposite of Speedy Wheels, so maybe we should just keep it at the same cost as Speedy Wheels. 6 modes. Yeah, this is a tricky one. And it's indefinite, which... I mean, when the charm is indefinite, that in theory means that you need to commit the modes throughout the entire investigation. And if you delay an investigation to a year, then doesn't that mean that you need to commit the modes an entire year? And that's kind of fucked. Because I don't think that's the way to go. Because then you basically need to... If you want to delay, if you want to stack multiple organizations, well, you need to basically commit all of your modes indefinitely, just to keep those organizations away. I don't think that's the way to go. I think there should be a way to either have the charm delay an investigation for as long as motes are committed to that investigation. That way, once you release the investigation, once you release the commitment, the investigation can finally start making some progress again. It could be that you just want to delay an investigation during the time you're in a particular town, for example, just to make sure that the law doesn't catch up to you in the town. And then once you leave the town, you release the commitment and you already have a head start. So I think that's a better way to deal with the charm. Another way to deal with it could be that you actually delay a task 1 degree, for example, from weeks to months, but you make an instant payment, but you can only delay that particular investigation by that much. So then you can't stack the charm against that investigation, but you can activate it for different kinds of investigations. That's another alternative. And I think that's better, actually. Then we can keep the cost a bit lower. Let's go down to 5 modes again. Duration instant. Solar delays. Yeah, but then I want a willpower. Let's do this just because it's instant. Are there any issues with this? Are there any issues with this? I think it's fine. Semantic argument technique. Cost 1 mote, type supplemental. Lawgiver's understanding of rules and the semantics of language makes her an effective and persuasive speaker. Add half the Solar's bureaucracy and dice rounded up to any social influence that engages a character's adherence to laws or rules is known to observe. This can refer to organizations he identifies with, but it can also be used to exploit defining principles he holds if the Solar is aware of them. So, +3 dice for 1 mote. I think this is... it's kind of narrow, but I don't think it's too narrow. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Empowered barter stance. Permanent. Once a day, the Solar gains a point of temporary willpower for... Fuck that shit. I don't like these charms. That's a bloat charm, and bloat charms are the devil. 5 motes, 1 willpower, simple, mute, psyche. The Solar can sell sand till the sun. This charm is a persuade action to convince a character that a particular thing is his heart's desire. The Solar can sell literally anything at outrageous prices. If the character's permanent willpower is equal to or lower than the Exalt's essence, no roll is required. The Exalt can cause the target to sell himself into slavery for a handful of potsherds or a kiss. If the target's willpower is greater than the Lawgiver's essence, the Solar rolls manipulation plus bureaucracy, persuade action with essence automatic successes against the target's resolve. If successful, the target is not only convinced that he must attain whatever the Solar is selling, but its value in his eyes is multiplied by the number of extra successes on the roll. In order to resist this effect, the character must spend the Solar's essence and willpower. Oof. Resisting soul snaring pitch makes a character immune to the charm for 1 week. Well, this is quite powerful. So, if the character's permanent willpower is equal or lower than the Exalt's essence, no roll is required. That's an automatic success. Permanent willpower. I don't think it's very likely that... This feels kind of unnecessary. Sure, there are mortals with low willpower, but you still need quite a lot of essence to have more essence than their permanent willpower. If it was their temporary willpower, then it was a different thing, because that fluctuates more, but I think we can ignore this part. Remove. Manipulation, bureaucracy with essence, automatic successes against the target's resolve. I'm just thinking. We had a charm, I think. I think we're fine. I was just looking if there were an overlap somewhere. But I think the rest of this charm is fine. The rest is a-okay. Vow Capturing Web. Bureaucracy 5, Essence 3, Permanent. The Solar becomes automatically aware anytime a curse or other magic is laid against their organization. She may not be aware of the exact details of such a power or where it comes from, but she does know where to look for evidence using investigation charms or a bureau rectifying method. At the moment the Solar first becomes aware of Fel magic, the player may also guess as to its source if it is reasonable that the Solar would know that what the player suspects. If correct, the Solar instantly knows the source of the magic and may use Bureau, Reform and Kata instantly. The Solar may, at the same time she uses Bureau, Reform and Kata, spend a number of modes equal to those used to launch the curse. By committing these modes, the Exalt traps the modes committed to the effect, preventing the source from relinquishing the curse before its normal duration has expired. So basically force the others to keep their commitment to it. I think we should probably add a little detail to Bureau, Reform and Kata that Solar is aware of. Cleanse hostile magic, the Solar is aware of the source of. Maybe aware of. And has located, maybe. Just to synergize with this charm a bit more. Spend a number of modes equal to those used to launch the curse. I think this part of the charm feels a little bit problematic to me because I'm trying to figure out what kind of effects this charm could face. Exalted 3rd edition is very limited when it comes to statted up curses. There are charm effects that this could work on that aren't technical curses, but they are magics. And this works on both, so I don't really see the point as well to why you would want to make this commitment. I feel like you need to gain something more from it. Maybe it would give some kind of bonus on an investigation to try to find the person who laid the curse. Because you don't have to find... Okay, the player must guess as to its source. If it is a reasonable soul, would know what the player suspects. If correct. Yeah, you basically need to know who laid the curse. And committing this Exalt traps these modes committed to the effect. I mean, the good thing is that basically you trap the curse by you preventing the curse from actually taking effect, while forcing the cursor to when trapping the curse, the source of the curse, Exalt or whatever. I think this is actually how it works, but it's a bit of a clarification, so just adding it as a note. Omen Spawning Beast. Permanent. The Solar becomes fused with her organization at the unconscious level. Her essence flows through all aspects of her bureaucracy, subtly altering her existence as she alters it in turn. If the Exalt has captured magic using Vogue Capturing Web, this charm allows her to discover profiling information among her immaculately kept paperwork, revealing the identity of the one whose magic has been snared. So you don't actually need to know that. think this needs to be clarified in this charms because it states that you need to accurately guess the source. The source of the magic is the person who laid the magic, in my opinion, but I think we need some kind of clarification. Or maybe I'm just stupid and misinterpret the charms. Bureau rectifying, let's jump back there. Or bureau performing. Instantly cleanse an organization and a hostile magic. Whether the soul is able to determine the presence of such magic depends on thoroughness and investigation. If the soul is satisfied that she has uncovered evidence of malignant force. Okay, so this charm basically means that you only need to have evidence of magic. Solar has found evidence of. The player may guess to its source if it's reasonable would know what the player suspects. So once you have found evidence of magic, the player can guess the source of that magic. If correct, the solar instantly knows the source of the magic. Let's make one small change here. Once the solar has uncovered. So the solar doesn't have to know the source of the magic, and I think the highlighted part here could actually be removed. I don't think it's irrelevant. Remove the player gets to guess the source part. I don't think that part of the charm is needed. I think that the moment evidence of magic is detected, you can trap it with this charm. And once you trap it, the magic no longer works on the organization, but the person who laid the curse thinks it still works. I think that's a good effect. The whole guess the source and such, I don't think that's relevant at all. But I'm not sure either. Feel free to comment below if you have your own thoughts about these charms. Let's look at Omen again. The solar becomes fused with blah 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 blah. If the Exalt has captured magic using Go Capturing Bed, this charm allows her to discover profile information among her. I think with the changes to the previous charms, Omen Spawning Beast becomes much more relevant. This becomes more powerful then, because trapping the effect lets you basically automatically know who caused it. You don't have to do any guesswork. A few more charms. Foul Air of Argument. Foul Air of Argument technique. 13 modes, 1 willpower, that's expensive. Indefinite. The lawgiver can arrest an entire armor government with 1 deft stroke. The solar targets a project she is aware of and dooms it with a flash of her cast mark. Roll Charisma, Manipulation plus Bureaucracy against the Bureaucracy, Investigation, Larceny or War, whichever is applicable to the project, of each character responsible for leading the project. For each success, that character will experience Solar's Essence botches trying to carry out that project. As failure manifests, the first result is that communication breaks down, becoming hostile, ineffective or completely impossible, as with the collapse of the information arm of a military establishment. A project that is a monumental failure may threaten the stability of an entire organization. This charm may not be used on a single organization more than once per season. I think same thing here. It's completely unnecessary, I think, to make it indefinite, because that just commits modes that you don't want to commit. And commit 13 modes for the time it would take them to do all the botches things. I think that's too harsh on the player. I think we could probably lower the mode cost as well. Let's go with 12 modes to still make it feel a bit. Duration instant. I mean, you can still only use it once per organization per season, so I think it's not something you're just throwing around anyway, even though it's not indefinite, I think. Maybe we should increase the mode cost after all. 15 modes maybe. Yeah, let's go with this. Eclectic verbiage of law. Permanent. The Solar's understanding of bureaucratic procedure is immense and complex. She may draw on this well of knowledge to enact a free, full bureaucracy. I have never been a fan of these charms, but these charms are... This charm is an example of one of the problems with the charms in the 3rd edition core book. These exist in craft as well, which we'll look at next time. But the charms that give you a full excellency are really only relevant in situations when modes are relevant. And most of the time when you do this bureaucracy or other narrative charms such as lore and craft, you don't really do those charms in situations when moat costs are a valuable resource, I should say, or worth keeping track of to that extent. Most of the time when you use a bureaucracy charm, you maybe use 1 or 2 charms in a scene, and that's it. Because you have one specific goal, you use the charm for a specific goal, and you burn some motes for that specific goal. And because it's a narrative scene, time flows and you will get your motes back. Most of the times, I would say, when, at least from my own experience playing the game, when you use a bureaucracy charm, you will have the motes available to spend on an excellency. At least you won't have a need to spend actual experience points getting a charm just to save those motes in those situations. Let's move on. Infinitely efficient register. Another permanent charm. As long as the lawgiver's organization has succeeded at one challenging project in the previous season, her bureaucracy automatically completes one project within its scope without ever undertaking it. Once per story, the Exalt may travel to an isolated section of her business headquarters where she will find the proof of a completed task. She might find useful tools, resources, deeds, valuable paperwork, and so forth. The storyteller should select items which will prove of some use to the Solar each time she decides to invoke this charm. The more powerful her organization, the better the discovered spoils will be. Note that use of this charm does not itself count as completion of a challenging project. So you basically get a free project completion per story. Once per story, the Exalt may travel to an isolated section of her business headquarters where she will find the proof of a completed task. I think that's kind of neat, actually. And this is something the storyteller determines, I suppose. The storyteller should select items which will prove some use to the Solar each time she decides to invoke the charm. Useful tools, resources, deed, valuable paperwork. Huh. Yeah, I like this a lot. This is neat. Yeah. Okay. Taboo inflicting diatribe. 10 modes on willpower. The lawgiver may pass down laws to her agents, which are sacrosanct. The solar repeatedly in ways against a certain action, making it anathema. It then becomes impossible for members of her organization to carry out that action, but only in the context of functions of the bureaucracy. Furthermore, the solar must be specific in citing those behaviors which are banned. Thus, she could not ban all theft, but she could ban theft from the company coffers or embezzlement of client capital. Likewise, while these bans would prevent members of her organization from stealing from her organization, they do not prevent those members from committing such crimes outside the jurisdiction of her organization. 3 organizations in one sentence, that's not fun. Characters affected by this charm can treat any social influence to break a defined taboo as an unacceptable one. So let me stack this charm essence times... Yeah, right, stack this charm essence times when it costs 10 modes, 1 willpower, fuck that shit. No, you're not going to stack 40 modes. The charm is really good, but the cost is completely whack. So we need to change the cost, and I do think we can keep the rest. And I think at this point, when you have Essence 4, the mote value for this kind of effect isn't really too high, I'd say. I have an idea. We keep the cost, but we change the duration. The charm works as intended, but you activate it once and pay immediately to create a essence taboos for a single organization, but no modes are committed. I think this makes the charm better because it's not the kind of effect that I think merits committed modes. I think it's fine to simply determine that you can have at Essence 4 different taboos associated with your organization. And once you decide to actually activate a taboo, you pay 10 modes 1 willpower, because it's worth doing. It could be worth having a high cost in that particular scene when you do the actual activation. When you do declaration, you know, you put the stone tablet down and shout out to your workers that read this shit. That could be worth a flashier moment, but to actually commit 10 modes just to keep that low in effect, that feels kind of strange. When you're a solar boss of an organization, you should only have to write the laws, I think, not actively enforce them using magic in that way. Just the fact that you make a law should be magical enough to be enforced. So I think this is a important clarification, or an important change. Subject hailing ideology. 5 mode supplemental instant. Eclectic verbiage. We need to change the prerequisite here. Some semantic argument technique. The lawgiver gains power through knowledge of the roles and identities of others. This charm supplements any social influence that appeals to an intimacy the solar is aware of at the former intensity, so long as the social influence is intended to make the subject act in some official capacity. For example, the lawgiver could attempt to persuade her bodyguard turned assassin to put down his weapon, invoking an intimacy of loyalty he once held but holds no longer. She could convince an ex-spouse to act in some capacity as if they were still married. She could even make a once loyal member of her organization remember his role and even make him wish to return to his former position. However, she could not use this charm to convince 2 enemies who have become lovers to remember their hate for one another. Why not? The charm only functions if there is some relevant official capacity being invoked. Thus the subject is hailed into a former role. Is there any more? No. I like the idea that you trigger an intimacy at the former intensity. So even if the target has spent years trying to change the nature of an intimacy, you can just show up as a solar and pull it back to where it was. Get them back into the addiction, so to say. I like that. She could not use the charm to convince two enemies who have become lovers to remember their hate for one another. I mean, I think she should be able to bring back pretty much any intimacy, even that kind of intimacy. The difference here is that those enemies who are now lovers, they have new intimacies for each other, causing some kind of cognitive dissonance. But that could be interesting narratively. So I'm not sure if this shall only function if there's some relevant official capacity being invoked. Thus the subject is hailed into a former role. So official capacity could be, you promised me once that you would kill that person and now you are married to them. I think that would at least circumvent this limitation. I think that would probably still circumvent this limitation, actually, because depending on how much value you put in official capacity. I think overall this is a really cool charm. I like it. Let's keep it. Hey, okay. And then we're on to the last one. Order conferring action. 10 motes, 1 willpower, simple, 1 week. The Solar's effective delegation of power bolsters the might of creation. To use this charm, the Solar must confer advice to a bureaucracy either directly or through mediators, letters, messengers, etc. The lawgiver proposes bureaucratic reforms and operating sequences that are efficacious and skillful. Roll charisma plus bureaucracy against a difficulty of 5. If successful, the organization's leaders gain a number of non-charm dice equal to the roll's extra successes. These dice can be used on Solar's essence, bureaucracy investigation, larceny, lore, medicine, or war rolls dealing with running a relevant organization or project. The Solar may enhance her own actions with this charm, and if she or any other Solar is a beneficiary of this effect, the organization becomes a creational bulwark on the spot. The wild cannot penetrate its territories, diseases struggle across its borders, and shadowlands encroach upon it more slowly. This effect lasts 1 week. I think that change is important. In case you don't get any threshold successes, they should still get that one extra die. These dice can be used on Solar's essence, so 5 bureaucracy, investigation, larceny, lore, medicine, or war rolls. Is that 5 per target? Or 5 in total? The organization's leaders. I mean, is it per leader? That's what I want to know. I think it's total number of rolls, actually. Solar may enhance her own actions with this charm, and if she or any other Solar is a beneficiary of this effect, the organization becomes... I think the creational bulwark effect is cool. The only question I have is this part. You commit 10 motes a full week. Oh, look at this. Can I get rid of that somehow? At least we have some sunlight, but this feels a bit weird. Maybe we should... Nah, it's too weird. I need to fix it somehow. Can we fix it somehow? I don't think I can fix it somehow. I think it's a little better at least. Let's jump back. Where was I? Before the sun tried to smite me. Right. So, you get 5 extra dice. No, you get threshold successes extra dice for 5 actions. For 5 weeks. And the actions have to be relevant to the organization. Why limit it? On the other hand, it's non-charm dice. Maybe we should make it charm dice after all. I think that's... I think that makes more sense. It prevents the number of dice from being too many, I think. And then you remove the limitation, the essence times limitations. And then your leaders can effectively use... It's a bit of an issue with, in the core book, that charm caps, mortal charm... There's no such thing as a mortal charm cap. So when you're providing dice to a mortal target, you're effectively using your own charm cap, dice cap. But if you're giving dice to an exalted target that has a dice cap, you will use their dice cap. And it doesn't really make sense, but the way the game is written means that it has to be used that way, I think. I'm not sure though if it would be a good point to just add a charm dice cap to mortals as well. Because that would limit a lot of charms. Or nerf a lot of charms rather. I think I'm happy with this charm, so I think I'm pretty much done actually. Let's jump back. Frugal Merchant Method was A-OK, Incited Buyer Technique A-OK, Consumer Evaluating Glance A-OK. We buffed All-Seeing Master Procurer to also work on Consumer Evaluating Glance, which I think is a worthy buff. We buffed the Illimitable Master Fence to work after only an hour instead of after a day. We reduced the cost for Deft Official's Way. We nerfed Measuring Glance a little to remove this particular effect. We reduced the cost of Speed of Wheels. We reduced the cost of Bureau Rectifying Method. We changed the duration of Enlightened Discourse Method from 1 scene to indefinite. We did some clarifications and I think improvements to Bureau Reform and Kata, especially after you use it together with Bureau Rectifying Method. And then we did some clarification. We changed Indolent Official Charm to be instant, which I think is a very important change. We removed Empowered Barter Stance because it sucked. We removed this part of Soul Snaring Pitch. We made some changes to Vogue Capturing Web, or clarifications rather, I think. We changed Foul Air to become instant but cost a little more, which I think is a good change. We removed eclectic verbiage because it sucked. And then we changed Taboo Inflicting Diatribe to make it more useful and more cost efficient in the long run. And then we changed Order Conferring Action to allow all actions to benefit from the extra dice, but changing the dice from non-charm to charm dice. I think that's it. And let's see. Very nice. I do think that compared to the charm trees I've gone over so far, Bureaucracy charms are the most solid overall, and that's primarily because they are narratively focused and they are not too mechanically focused. Most of these charms are actively progressing the story in some way, and that makes the charms more useful in a sense. The main issues with the charms were associated with moat commitment, in my opinion. There are a lot of expensive charms in the Bureaucracy tree, and a lot of them requires commitments over what could be seen as extremely long periods of times, especially when you affect an investigation or change a bureaucracy in some way, because the charms both say that you can effectively change a task for years while still committing moats to that change, and that seemed to indicate that the moats need to be committed for years as well, which is not very fun. So I changed most of those charms to instant, and I don't think I have broken anything actually with these changes. I do think these make Bureaucracy charms more manageable, at least from a moat cost standpoint. But I'm curious to see what you think as well. So if you disagree with some of my changes, or if you have your own opinions about alternative changes, I think you should comment below, because I am curious to read it, and I think that the people watching this video would be curious to see alternative points of view as well. So whether you agree with me or not, only good things can come from more suggestions in the comments for how to change charms. So do keep commenting, and if you like this video and want to see more, remember to like, share, comment and subscribe. And if you want to support me in some way, I do have a playable adventure called The Crystal Feather on the Storyteller's Vault, link in the description, and I recommend that you check it out. It's 46 pages, a brief playable adventure, some extra NPCs, there are some artifacts with evocations, and a new custom setting that you can use. So it's worth checking out. And I also have a Patreon. The things I offer on my Patreon is mostly associated with Machineborn, which is a personal game that I'm writing. And I do try to get previews out every month that that you can get access to if you become a Patreon for $1 a month, which isn't too much. And it even if it's not too much, it helps me a lot. So I do appreciate if you check that out. I do also post things on Patreon that aren't behind the paywall. All of the videos I post on this channel are also posted on Patreon. Occasionally I do some free previews as well. Those are mostly associated with Machineborn as well, so if you're interested in that game, you can check that out and browse back to see some older free previews. All of the manuscripts for my scripted videos, so not this one because this is unscripted, but the scripted videos are posted behind the $5 paywalls, and if you want to give me a little bit of extra, but you feel like you want something back as well, the manuscript is at least something. I do want to give more back, but I'm not really sure what else I could offer actually, because there's only so many hours in the day, and if I do a bunch of extra material, for example for patrons now, that could affect the time that I can crank out these videos. So as of right now, the manuscript is the only extra thing you get at $5, but I do appreciate the support if you're willing to bid that much. As for the game itself, Machineborn, it is going to be free, so you don't have to be a patron to actually access the game when it's done. I'm aiming to get a very extensive playtest document out for free by summer, and it's looking like I'm going to manage that, because the game itself is more or less done. I have all the rules done, character creation is done, augmentations are done, minus a couple of feats. Yesterday I sat 12 hours writing technologies. The current draft is almost 300 pages. I think it will be a bit more when it's done, but I only have to add some content now. The game itself is actually done and fully playable, though not tested. So there will be a playtest document either way before summer. So you have that to look forward to, and I'm going to announce that on this channel as well if you watch my RPG news series, which I've started. And I do recommend that you watch those as well, because I like them and I put effort into them, so I would appreciate if you give them a view and like as well. Anyway, I think that's it for now. The next charm video will be about craft, and there are a hell of a lot of craft charms, so I'm not really sure if I have to divide it up. I will try to get everything into one video, but it could be a long one, so we'll have to see. Anyway, that's all I have for now, so I hope you enjoy this. And now my stomach is grumbling. I do hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you in creation.